Hey, all, Papercut here, back with another video. This time I want to break down what does it take to improve and grind and get up the AOE 4 ladder. I want to do this video because as someone who coaches and streams and takes part in the AOE 4 community, I have heard from a lot of people who ask all the time, how do I climb? I'm stuck at my rank. I feel like I'm growing really slowly. And as someone who was new to RTS when I played AOE 4 at the beginning, as well as now hitting Conqueror 2 multiple times, and being a teacher myself, I taught for 9 years before I changed my job, which has allowed me to do this more. I feel like I have a unique perspective on what it takes to learn something and get better and improve on it quickly. Note, for some people, hanging out in gold or silver, whatever rank you're in, and just having fun with the game in whatever way you find fun is perfect. That's good for you. This video is mostly targeted towards the sickos like me, whose enjoyment of the game comes from grinding and improving and getting up in the ranks. There's just a enjoyment you get from that. The first thing people often ask me about is civs. How many should they know? Should they change and just play one? When I was a teacher, it was pretty obvious when teaching that as humans we can only learn a few things at a time. When teaching high schoolers, I made sure to never have more than 3 important concepts in a lesson. Any more than that, and students struggled. They slowed down, their processing load was too great, and they just tended not to remember anything at all, which taught me something really important. We do better when we can reduce the processing load and really focus in on a couple key things. This relates to AOE 4 and RTS in general really well, because there are a lot of things you have to learn. There are always multiple things you have to do, which is why it feels really tough to improve. It feels like the skill cap is really high. It feels like you aren't growing very fast because there's constantly things you're trying to learn and improve on, which is true. That's why it does feel so slow, which I think why it's helpful to separate AOE 4 into 2 skill groups. So let's start there. There are many skills for you to master, as I said in AOE 4, but I would separate them into 2 groups. You have your civ-based skills, strengths, weaknesses, builds, counters, strategies, map-dependent, civ-dependent, things like that. There's also game-based skills, attacking, defending, game sense, overall civ knowledge, map, micro, macro, etc. The things that are just you need to know no matter what civ you play. That is a lot to take in. So whenever you can cut down as much variance as possible and reduce the things you have to learn, you will improve faster. This is why I think often people who focus on one civ tend to climb the ladder faster, because they're reducing the things they have to learn. They are making it easier for them to then learn faster because they are just focusing on their civ and the game. That is why people who switch civs a lot tend to learn slower and climb slower, because you're increasing your learning load. Not only do you slow down your game knowledge growth because you've increased your processing load, but you're also adding in a whole new set of skills with a new civ. That leads to my second point, purpose. I think it's important for you to define what matters to you when you're talking about growing and getting better at the game. Are you looking to just become the highest rank as quick as possible? Or are you looking to become a great overall well-rounded player and let your rank rise organically? I say this because if you spam one civ, especially the civs that are strong depending on the patch, you can get to a really high rank playing one civ. There are plenty of people who play only one civ and they play it every season and they're really good at it. In fact, I would argue that's the easiest way to climb because, as I said, you've reduced the things you have to know, which makes your processing and makes your learning a lot faster. And when you consider the game, there's nothing in the game that requires you to know multiple civs. Really, the only time you need to know multiple civs is if you're doing like a tournament or something, because if someone can just ban your best civ, you just lose. On the other hand, if your point is to become just a very well-rounded player who's good at as much of the game as possible, then you need to learn the other civs. And that leads to when should you switch to other civs. My suggestion is this: play one civ until you reach your new highest rank. At that point, you then switch to a different civ that you find interesting and try to get that civ to that rank, because you will lose with that civ when you switch to it. You just don't have the civ knowledge. This will allow you to grow faster because you are using the game knowledge that you have and applying it to the civ that you're trying to learn, which it will still be slower, but you will be more likely to get it to the rank you're currently at faster if you do it that way than trying to consistently switch civs while climbing at the same time. You have to focus on one or the other. Get to a new high rank, then switch to a civ and try to get that civ to that same rank. This is why you see people who've taken one civ and gone to like Conqueror are able to then learn another civ pretty fast. And that's because their game knowledge is really high. So when they're picking up a new civ, they can put all of their brain, all of their processing power to just learning that civ, which makes it a much faster process. I'll give my example, my own personal journey. When I first started playing AOE 4, I messed around with a lot of the civs, so I wasn't very good. And then finally when I decided I wanted to climb, I played just Delhi, and I played Delhi a lot. And I got it to Diamond, and then eventually I hit Conqueror 1, and it was an amazing feeling. but I realized I was never going to get past Conqueror 1, not really. At that point, I realized people knew how to counter me. People took me to places that I didn't know very well, such as Castle or Imperial, and really pushed my skills that way. I realized for me to become a more well-rounded player, which is truly what I wanted to be able to do a lot of things, I needed to switch civs. So I switched to China and fell to Platinum multiple times. I got my ass kicked constantly because China required such a different skill set as well as improvement to my game skills. That experience, though, made me a much better player, but it took time and a lot of losses. This leads me to my third point, losing with a purpose. At the point I started deciding that I really wanted to improve in AOE 4, I decided that each time I lost, I needed to identify why. To me, this is losing with a purpose. I gained something from this loss, and then I kept it into the next game. I always started the game with a plan and an action step that I needed to work on. So for example, playing Delhi, my plan was often to attack in feudal. I needed to put on pressure, take sacred sites, and then either finish the game in feudal or rush castle and win on a big push. That meant that I needed to do a bunch of things well. I needed to make sure my economy was on point so I can make units. I needed to consistently make units. I needed pressure. So often when I lost the game, I'd go back and see, where did I mess up? Did I not make enough units consistently? Did I not attack in the right spot? Did I not scout very well? And I would try to find one thing that I need to do better next time. Often you will pick not the right thing, especially if you're like gold or silver, but that's okay. It's trial of elimination. If you've picked something that you need to improve on and it doesn't actually help you win the game, maybe it was something else you need to improve on. But you have to be doing that process yourself because you will learn then how to identify what went wrong. For example, my game plan would often be, I'm going to be aggressive against the Civ, and this time I'm going to make sure I'm always making units. So I had my plan and the one step I'm really looking to improve on. If you don't have a plan, you will struggle to identify what went wrong because you didn't do anything decisively. A plan helps you realize, if I need to play defensive, if I'm playing against French and they're pushing me, did I put up walls? Was I watching for the knight to come in? Did I scout the first knight leaving the French base? These things help you then next game be a little bit more conscious of the things you need to do better. And lastly, a plan helps you have good decision making. If you know what you're trying to do, all your decisions, all the adjustments that you need to make in game flow from that plan. This also, funnily enough, means that you need to embrace losing if you want to climb the ladder. Fear no loss will lead to ranked anxiety because you're afraid of losing your precious elo, but you have to take the big picture on this. If you really want to improve, you have to be willing to lose a lot and then take those losses and turn them into wins down the line because you've learned something from them. Just always try to find a goal from each loss, and remember, AOE 4 is an extremely difficult game, and you have to give yourself some grace in losing. Fourth point, you need to dedicate yourself to the grind. To learn something, you have to do it a lot. To grow muscle, you have to lift. To ride a bike, you have to crash. When my baby was learning how to stand, she fell again and again and again and again. The point I'm trying to make is, if you truly want to climb, consistency and reps are the key. You can't skip them. When I coach someone, I often tell them that you need to play every day. I would suggest at least 3 games. I understand for many people who have lives, these matches can take a long time, and you don't have time to do that. I personally sacrifice sleep. I love the game. I love the grind. That's what I do. But if you want to improve, you have to play every day, even for a bit, because the skills you're working on require reps. Macro requires the practicing of adjusting your resources based on the information you're gaining. Micro requires you to practice the movement of units in very precise ways. The best players have thousands of hours of gameplay to draw from whenever they make a decision. That's a lot in their information base. That's not something that can be skipped. It takes time and dedication and reps to both gain the skill but also gain the muscle memory. Now, while I say that does lead to my 5th point, seek guidance. While reps cannot be skipped, you can improve those reps with knowledge gained from the game. This is especially important if you're someone with limited game time, but maybe at work you can put on a video or you have a lunch block you're not using. As a teacher, I would have 2 planning periods a day where I could put on a video or watch something while I'm grading or working on a lesson. Being able to watch how high-level players do something is invaluable, and there's a lot of resources on YouTube or watch feature on AOE 4 World that helps you get better. Here are some of my tips to how to use the play of others to improve. First, you should use the watch feature on AOE4World.com. If you're struggling with a certain matchup or on a certain map, go use that feature to watch how higher level players do it. I remember doing this distinctly when I was learning China. I was getting my ass kicked by French, so I would watch high-level players play China against French multiple times because I'd see how each player kind of adjusted differently to it, how they would adjust if a French player played in a way that I wasn't expecting, and it really helped me see the thought process in action. Another thing you should do is watch tournament games, such as on Rising Empires or EGC TV. These tournament games are often where high-level players are trying very, very hard, and you will see how they adjust and do things in the moment, and the casters that they have on these events are usually knowledgeable enough to give you good advice about what's happening in the moment. And lastly, seek out coaching or advice. Coaching often costs money, but can be a massive improvement if you're willing to make that investment and if you find a good coach. And if you don't have the money to pay, there are many Discords where you can ask questions and get answers. People in the community are very generous if you just ask. There's my coaching Discord, of course, plug, but also there's the AOE4 coaching Discord, there's the Gear Up Bara, there's the AOE4 Reddit. There's so many places you can go and get help. That people are always willing to help others who are just asking for it. So much of my improvement in the game came from listening to how better players play, their thought process, why they did things like that. And it helped me get better even if I didn't have time to play. My last point is the basics. There's so many things you can improve on as a player, but often you need to do the basics first. Here are a few things I'm often giving advice on when I'm coaching people, usually from anywhere from bronze to platinum. These are the things I'm saying the most. First, scout the whole game, not just the beginning. You want sheep, but also to identify resources for future attacks, your own side's layout for defense, and you want to identify what the opponent is doing so you can adjust accordingly. That leads to my second step. Use the knowledge you gain and actually act upon it. I will have people I'm coaching who will see their opponent open archery range, but they don't go stables to make horsemen. They just see it and don't do anything about it. The point being is, if you get something, you see something, use that knowledge. Third, have a plan going into the game. Even if you have to adjust it as things happen, a plan allows you a good starting off point and a good reflection point when the game ends. 4, always be making villagers. 5, keep adding production and making units consistently throughout the game. It is amazing how often games just come down to who had enough production, who was always making units. 6, learn the hotkeys. This will help with villager production, this will help with scouting, this will help with everything. Hotkeys just allow you to do things quickly, and if you commit it to muscle memory, you don't have to think about the action, which it's amazing how much thinking about an action and clicking it with your mouse takes up time. 7, keep adjusting your resources and your macros as the game goes on. Ask, what resources do I have? What do I need based on my plan? And fix the villagers, rally them to that point, or maybe move some from a resource you have a lot of. And lastly, 8, be decisive. If you make a decision, follow through, and afterwards identify why it did or did not work. Once again, you have to use the losses to get better. So if you decide, I'm playing this in this matchup, I'm going to TC, I'm going to see if I can then feudal fight after it doesn't work, identify why. At least you got to test something and try it. I hope this video has been helpful to you. If it has, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, like the video. It helps so much of a channel my size. If you're interested in getting support, check out my Discord or follow me on Twitch and see what a fine lad that I am. I hope this was helpful to you. Good luck, have fun, and good luck on your games.